you are in this world to become happy. You are not here to suffer. And when I'm saying happy, it's not that you're going to be dancing every day and you're going to be, laughing away and, giggling away. That's not the happiness. The happiness is that whatever happens in your life, whether good or bad, your life condition will not change. And you will always accept it with calm and peace, and you will live through it. A lot of the way I manage my life today in terms of dealing with things like these, where I don't get overwhelmed, is because, I put my name in the lottery for Tokyo Marathon. I got my name after 7 years. 7 years of putting my name and by the way, there's a whole story behind it as well, and I'll come to that.
Is there anything that you would want to say to people who might be struggling to come back into the sport?
So I'll tell you the one big thing I'll tell people is that I was at the start line of Border Ultra
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock on the Saturday morning on 14th December.
Yeah.
My second attempt to do a 100-miler in Jaisalmer.
Yeah. What was this run like? Talk us through this.
This run was, before I went in for this race, I thought that maybe once I do my 100-miler, I'll probably kind of hang up my Ultra boots. No way.
Yeah.
No way. I've already signed up for the next one.
You disappeared for a while from running.
I did.
So what happened?
So I had...
Welcome back to the Find Your Ultra podcast. This is perhaps the final episode of 2024. This is a conversation with my friend Rashmi Mohanty, who's a finance professional. She was in fact one of the fastest to achieve financial officer position or some shit like that. We're allowed to use words like this on my podcast. So I read this somewhere. I don't know what that means, how they measure it, but she's a top finance professional and she's a mother of two and she loves the sport of ultra running. She's one of the first female ultra runners that I got to know of, and I've had the privilege of sharing the track with her on a number of occasions. And I've known her off the field as well. She's a wonderful person. In this podcast, like I've done an episode with her before, not on the Find Your Ultra podcast. It was actually another podcast that does not exist anymore. It wasn't mine. It was somebody else's. I was just a host. But I've had the privilege of speaking with her before. This, though, is a fresh conversation where we've learned, like sort of started from beginning, but we've tried to focus a little bit more on the aspect of making a comeback into the sport of ultra running. A lot of us struggle with that because it's not like it does not pay our bills. A lot of us do have a full-time job or a business or something that we do full-time for making a living. And it just happens to be our love, and it's never easy to pursue what you love on the side. And basically a lot of us do struggle to make comebacks when we struggle to head out for those long runs, and we sort of are never able to cover up the mileage required for these ultra marathons that we absolutely love running. So in this episode, she's talked about how she disappeared, how some of the things that happened around the sport in her life and in the sport itself impacted her, and how she managed to sort of make a comeback despite all of that. It's a lovely episode. A good farewell to 2024. So do tune in, enjoy the episode. Without further ado, here's Rashmi Mohanty and me in the Find Your Ultra podcast, final episode of 2024. I don't know what number it is, but indulge away. Rashmi Mohanty, welcome to the Find Your Ultra podcast.
Thank you very much.
This is our round 2, but the world doesn't know about round 1 because it does not exist. I was working with an organization at the time, and I think their channel is now deleted. So that podcast does not exist. But I remember the experience being so enriching that time as well. So I'm glad we are doing it again.
Thank you very much.
Superb. So on the Find Your Ultra podcast, we do get to learn about the person first, and then their life and mission and message and all of that. I've known you, the running community has known you for a while. You're one of the OGs in the Indian female
I will be completing
scene.
15 years of long distance running next month.
Wonderful. So
I started long distance running.
Yeah.
Or I got reintroduced, let's say, and I'll explain the word why reintroduced to running in January of 2010. So
okay.
Yeah, it's
so
15 years.
Let's come to that.
Yeah.
What I've developed more interest now in is getting to know the person and their journey so far. So take me back to your childhood.
Okay. So I'm born and brought up in Delhi. Did my schooling, was born here, did my schooling. In fact, my college, my graduation, I'm an engineer from what used to be DIT at that time. And I think now it's called NSUT, Netaji Subhash University or something like that. Institute of
I
Technology.
live right beside it.
Okay,
That's where
fine.
I
Yeah.
live,
So you know the place then. So I did my computer engineering from there, and then straight away went to IIM Bangalore, where I did my master's PGDM course, and then started working. But we've been in Delhi all along. My parents both were working. So my mother was working with the Department of Post and Telegraph, which no longer exists.
It doesn't?
It doesn't. Post and
How are we
Telegraph.
doing without it?
Yeah, because everything is now
Digital.
automated, digital. So yeah, there's nothing called Post and Telegraph. And whatever remnants are there, I think it's got merged with Department of Telecom, I think.
I see.
My father was in a private service with 3 sisters. And so you can very well imagine the unsaid burden that they used to carry because they had 3 daughters to look after. And the only thing that they were very clear about from day one was that we have to get our daughters educated. To the extent that as we were growing up, every time any of the relatives or even otherwise in casual conversations, they would clearly tell us that for us, it's very important for you to get educated. We are not going to save for your dowry or for your wedding. If we get you educated, I'm sure you will find ways to manage your wedding and your dowry and everything, your life thereafter. So education was important. And all 3 of us were good students. I went to a private school, and luckily for me, from the very early years, I was somebody was interested in doing a lot of things at the same time. So I was a hyper child. I still remember that, Vipin, because I was very close to my grandmother. And every time I would come back home, she used to be, because my mother was working, so my grandmother would obviously take care of us. And then in the afternoon, when I would come back home, and my grandmother would serve us lunch after coming back from school. And she used to joke later with my husband. And I still remember that I could not sit still to have that food. I had to get up after 1 chapati, do some dance, look around, see what's happening, then go back and have another chapati. And so I was one of those hyper childs. Thankfully for me, this energy got channelized into good things. And I was an athlete, so I used to do sprints and jumps while in school and even in college. And I used to bring home a lot of medals. And it was a matter of pride for my parents to display all my medals right in the drawing room. So you can imagine, we used to stay in a government flat, a small whatever hall or drawing room as you may call it. And on one wall of the drawing room, we had a nail put up where I would go and hang my medals every year after the sports day.
Nice.
And it was a matter of pride for them. So I was an athlete, very active child. And what also helped me was the fact that, and that wasn't, I don't think it was my doing, but maybe the teachers spotted in me that I was also good in things like debate and declamations. So that gave me an opportunity to get onto the stage, to be fearless in front of a large audience, and to be able to also develop my speaking skills. And that is what has shaped me, I guess. That is where probably I will put a lot of emphasis on in terms of how I came out of the school and the college period as an individual. I was a very shy child. You may think, really, Rashmi, she talks a lot and she is shy.
Yes.
But I was a very shy child. It takes, and even today, probably it takes a little bit of a time to open up with people. But the fact that I was doing all those activities was a way to not overcome, but to kind of counter the shyness, the natural shyness or the introvert.
You were trying to overcompensate in some way.
Overcompensate in, yeah. So I guess that whole thing helped me. Suppose if those activities were not there, probably, if I wasn't a good athlete and I therefore wasn't being asked to come and represent my house in each and every event, or if I wasn't being asked by my teachers to come and participate in debate or declamation contests and be there on the stage, I guess I would have come out as a very different personality from the school and the college. So that probably helped in shaping up the way I was.
And what about your sisters then? Were they also athletic?
No, they weren't athletic at all.
So they got a lot of. They hated you.
They didn't hate me, but they were good in other stuff. So, for example, the middle sister is very creative and artistic, and so she was very good in painting.
So, did she get her share of?
She used to get her share of fame as well. She used to get her medals in painting, and I used to get my homework, painting homework done from her. And my teacher would always wonder, this girl draws such a crappy drawing in class whenever I give her, because we used to have these art classes in school.
And you give her
and
an
every time you give her an assignment and she
comes
comes back with such lovely pictures. She figured it out eventually that there's something wrong going on. But she was good in painting and art. And the younger one was a jack of all kind of a person, but all three of us were good in studies. We managed to do a lot of our schooling years through scholarships, and which is why even till today, one of the causes that my mother supports is education.
Wow.
So she says, I didn't have to pay for my kids' education, and therefore I would like to contribute by paying for somebody else's education or donating books or notebooks or pencils or something like that.
Amazing.
So that is how life was. So people, talk to anybody of our age and they'll say, oh, we were a typical middle class family. But I guess that's what existed at that time. There were typical middle class families only. So a typical middle class family, a family of 3 daughters, parents, and then my grandmother.
Your grandmother.
Yeah, we used to live together. Yeah.
And you also mentioned unsaid burden of having 3 daughters. Was it really, was it unsaid?
It was. It was in the sense that while we were doing well in studies, and therefore my parents were very clear that they will help us and support us in making sure that we get educated as we want to. There were obviously constraints. So, for example, I remember in class 12, my father clearly said, I'm not going to be sending you outside. You have to therefore crack the DCDIT, which means that I had to score high marks in class 12 board. But I'm not sending you out. So there were these constraints that we had to operate in. He was a very strict father that became, and I'll come to that story later, how he became a dear friend in terms of being very open with us. But at that time, he was like, so you decide, what you want to do. And which means that I knew I had to work hard to get a good score in class 12 board, because that was my only shot of getting an engineering degree. So that was there.
And why did you want to become an engineer? Because that's what you become at the time.
There's an interesting story for that. So class 10th, when you choose your streams.
Yeah.
So the streams that we had were biology, so medical, engineering, drawing, commerce, and arts.
Yeah.
And obviously, I was a very good student. So,
Science.
And with all due respect to commerce and arts students and graduates, science was the only thing to do.
Yeah.
I used to hate biology.
Abhi ulta ho raha hai, by the way.
Abhi ulta ho raha hai. I could not draw. I told you I used to get my sister to do the assignment. So therefore, biology was out of the question because it required a lot of diagrams to be made.
Yeah.
And so biology was out. So the only thing left was engineering drawing. Now, engineering drawing, even though you had scales and you had all those other equipment to do your drawing.
You had to carry equipment like this.
Yes, but it still is drawing. It still is drawing. Thankfully for me, that particular year, the school introduced another stream called computer science, which was the upcoming field.
Yes.
And since I was a good student amongst the toppers, it just made my life easy. Or actually, it just kind of made it easy for me to say, okay, fine, everything discarded, computer science it is. And therefore, I went into computer science in class 11. And because I'd taken 11 and 12, computer science in class 11 and 12, it was natural that if I had to pursue a career in that, engineering was the only way to go and do it. And that was the reason why.
But no thoughts on becoming an athlete since you were good at sports?
No, because you just could not make any money in sports. Sports was not
so that was not even a consideration.
That was never. So it was something which my parents encouraged me to do. But it wasn't something that you could think of as a career back then. Yeah. They were very happy when I used to get the medal. They were absolutely fine me spending time on the field, training if I have to, etc. But I don't think that anybody could think of sports, forget athletics, as a career at that point in time. Yeah. So it had to be, and you're a good student, you have computer science as an elective. why would you not pursue a career in sciences or engineering? So that was it.
Okay. And did you then, once you got into college, did you continue your
So
fitness?
it wasn't. So the difference between school and college was that in school, while you had the annual sports day where you could showcase your ability, but you also had a regular rhythm maintained through the school years where you had the PT classes.
Yeah.
Whereas in college, you didn't have the luxury of that. So my involvement with athletics remained only for the annual athletics day.
Okay.
And it just dropped through the year. But yeah, because I guess muscle memory or whatever, or because there's just very few women in the engineering colleges, it just helped that I kind of managed to continue winning medals even in college as well.
Wow. So, and you continued running. Running was the main
the
thing?
main thing, yeah.
Wow.
But I will give you a story. I was a sprinter, as I said, 100, 200 max. And I remember in college, we did not have anybody for doing the 400 meters from our stream, computer science stream. And they said, Rashmi, go for it. And I knew I will not be able to, complete the 400 meter. But then they said, okay, go participate. I said, okay, fine. And I was able to do the first 200 meters very easily. There were 5 of us who started. I was number 3. The 2 dropped out. And I remember, and we still joke, this friend of mine, he ran with me the entire track. And he said, Rashmi, sirf khatam karna hai, bronze medal aa jayega. Bas khatam karna hai, bas khatam karna hai. But that khatam karna for the next 200 meters was like another story altogether. But yeah, I did manage to finish. Collapsed. I didn't collapse as in like died or something. But yeah, I was like totally exhausted with that 400 meter run. And but I got the bronze medal for the stream.
Tell us a little bit about your early career.
So in fact, after college, I would say the focus on fitness or the focus on being fit or running, etc., it just went away. I started working in Mumbai, which is not hometown for me. So getting used to a very different kind of a life, which is a working life in a very different city. And therefore, fitness, running, everything just took a backseat. I started working for a bank in Mumbai. Spent 3 years in Mumbai and then moved back to Delhi because I was getting married and my husband was working here in Delhi itself. And I guess life just happened, and in the whole hustle and bustle of early career focus, settling down in a new house, in a new environment, setting up a house, etc. I guess, as I said, fitness, running, athletics, everything just took a backseat. I would, if I remember correctly, the first time I think I went back to a gym after a very long gap to just run on the treadmill was after my first child. And that was to lose the pregnancy weight.
Okay.
So I started working in 95. My first child happened in 2003. So 2004. So almost after a gap of, let's say, 9 years and 10 years, I went back to start running, and I was only to lose weight. And then I dropped the weight, and then I again went back to with a small child, then I had a second one. So, again, running, fitness just took a backseat.
Yeah. But I can imagine the challenges of being a mother, just settling in and also holding on to your career and then struggling with fitness. What was that like, juggling all of these?
So there was this period where it was just about managing the career and the kids and the home. It was just that. I think that light bulb moment for me happened after my second child was born, and I was 38. And I had put on a lot of weight after my second one. And it was a bit difficult as well, the pregnancy. And I'd put on a lot of weight. And at 38, I said...
The second pregnancy happened at 38?
2007.
38 is pretty late. Like my wife...
So 35, 36, 35, 36.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so the 2 years went by. And then at about 38 is when I said I just need to take my life back into my hands. So I'd live with that increased weight, uncomfortable.
Bubbling of frustration.
Yeah, all of those things. And at 38, I said, I don't want to cross over into my 40s as this. I really do want to transform myself. And I also knew that if I don't do something today, it becomes difficult as you grow older to
Yeah.
start to lose weight.
Yeah.
And to get, and maybe it's all wrong because I still see a lot of people even now in their mid 40s and their early 50s who kind of manage to get back to an active lifestyle and who kind of become healthy. And by the way, weight is not just the only measure of being healthy, but there
Yeah.
are other measures of being healthy. And I've seen people become healthy.
Yeah.
But
But they're outliers, honestly.
but they're outliers. It
Yeah.
becomes, you can become healthy. It
Yeah.
isn't that. It
Yeah.
just becomes difficult.
difficult.
It just becomes difficult.
You
So
just have
for-
to work that.
you have
that
to
much.
work that much
In your
harder.
20s, you don't have to do a squat.
Exactly.
And you look perfect. and
Perfect,
everything,
yeah. But in
But-
40s, the same squats will not work. The effort
Exactly.
doubles, triples.
Yeah.
So at 38, I said, I definitely don't want to get into my 40s as what I am. And therefore, something has to be done. And so I started running, joined the gym. I used to go on the weekends. Weekdays used to be very difficult. But on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday morning, I would land up in the gym, do about half an hour, 35 minutes of the treadmill run, a slow run, do some weights, and come back. But that was the first step towards me saying, I want to be healthy. Okay? The long distance running came a little later, after about a year or so. But that was the first step to me saying, I don't want to be like who I am right now, overweight, not happy with how I am looking, how I'm feeling, more importantly. Looking and feeling is different to how I'm feeling right now. And that is when I joined the gym and I started working out to just get back into shape.
Yeah. That was the first step.
Yeah. That was the first step, yeah.
Okay. And running then after that?
The long distance running is another story, which is that in 2009 and 2010, my husband decided to quit his corporate job and he said he wants to do something new. I was stuck in a job which was very well paying, but it was a very frustrating period, or the most frustrating period of my career were those 2 years that I was in that job. And I couldn't have quit at that time because he'd quit his job and he was going to start his own business. So there was no way I could have left my job as well. I had 2 toddlers at home, vying for attention, and a whole lot of, and then I just lost my father. So there was just a whole lot of things going on in my life at that point in time. And my sister, the younger one, who I just said was jack of all trades, was a couch potato, by the way. And she was going through her own midlife crisis at that point in time. And I remember she called me up one day and she said, let's come to Pondicherry. And I said, what's happening in Pondicherry? And she said, there's a half marathon in Pondicherry. And I said, what is a half marathon? She said, 21 kilometers.
Yeah.
I said, do you even know what 21 kilometer is? It's very long.
Yeah.
She said, I just did an 18 kilometers last weekend as a last
She said
long.
that.
She said that.
I think I've heard this on
Yeah.
Leap's podcast maybe.
Yes,
but
yeah.
Okay.
And as I said in the other podcast as well, it was ego. I said, my God, this girl used to be a couch potato and how can she go run a 21? Here I am, just running a 4-5 kilometer on the treadmill and being very happy about it. I need to do something about it as well. And you know, okay, the other thing that I believe is that there is no such thing called coincidence.
Okay.
There is no such thing as coincidence in your life.
Wow, really?
Whatever comes or happens for a reason. So this conversation happened. I said, sorry, I cannot go with you.
I mean, but that's like connecting the dots and then making sense of it.
Yeah, that is when you start saying, oh, it's a coincidence, and you start connecting the dots. But at that point in time, you don't know what is going to happen next. But
where is going
just
to lead
remember
you.
this thought.
Sure.
I have a very dear friend who's an ex-colleague, and he had come to meet me. And he knows my family and he knows my sisters. And he said, what is Charu doing? What is Jyoti doing? And I said, do you know what? Charu is going to Pondicherry to run a 21 kilometer. Can you imagine, Ajay? She's going to run a 21. And he said, I'm also going to run a 21 kilometer. I said, what's happened to the world? And those 2 conversations changed my life. In terms of running coming back into my life. And the very next day, I said, if I have to run long, and of course, Charu told me that you can't run long on the treadmill. So I laced up my shoes next day, stepped out of my community gate, Hamilton, and I went out for a run. I don't know how much would I have run. Probably I would have run the same distance, 5 or 6 kilometers, which was out on the road this time, not on the treadmill.
Okay.
And that was the introduction to long distance running in a way.
Wow. But
And-
so many things that you've mentioned in passing with a smile, but when you were dealing with your husband quitting the job, you being so frustrated with a job that was paying you so well, but also costing you so much in terms of mentally,
Yes.
right? And your father passing at the same time. I can easily imagine myself and probably a lot of other people who would be so stressed about it and would probably struggle to deal with it. How do you deal with situations like that?
When people ask me, who are you, or define yourself, I tell them there are two aspects of mine, or two ways I define myself. One is I'm a long distance runner. That has shaped me, and that defines me. And what I am today is because of my long distance running. And we'll come to the details of that in terms of my fearlessness, in terms of my resilience, in terms of my never give up attitude. It is because of that.
Wow.
The other thing that happened around the same time in January of 2010 was that I got introduced to Buddhism. And that is the other aspect of my life which has shaped the way I am today. A lot of the way I manage my life today in terms of dealing with things like these, where I don't get overwhelmed, is because of the philosophy that I follow as a practicing Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be completing 15 years of long distance running in January and 15 years of being a Buddhist practitioner in January as well.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Which is why I say there is no such thing as a coincidence. There was a reason why both of these things happened at the same time. And today, whatever I am, Vipin, is because of the fact that there are parts of me that have been shaped up by the philosophy that I follow and the fitness regime that I follow as a long distance runner. And that gave me strength. And I don't want to get into details about that, but that gave me strength and the hope, because this philosophy actually is all about hope, that this isn't the end of the world. You have to be also grateful for so many other things in your life that are going right, and not to look at whatever is not right for you right now, because there's again a reason why it is the way it is. And of course, the philosophy goes on to explain why it is. They have their own explanation as to why we are experiencing what we're experiencing. But the more important thing is it says even if you're experiencing what you're experiencing, things will change for the better. So that hope and also the compassion that it teaches you for others and the gratitude it teaches you for whatever is going good in your life is what has shaped me. And I think that put together, the two of them put together, is what helped me cope up with all that was going on in my life.
Wonderful. I walked into this room thinking we'll talk running, but which we will do. But I think, but I totally agree. I think this is so much about getting basically the way you look at the world and your perspective. Because at any given point, even if things are getting overwhelmed, you can actually, if you
can
have the
overcome
awareness,
that.
you can find
way
things to be grateful about.
Absolutely. Every day there'll be something or the other you will be grateful for.
Yeah.
Just that, we ignore that and we kind of keep wallowing in our own sorrows and we keep thinking about what is not going right for us.
Yeah.
We have to just change the lens.
No, I wonder, like, looking at you come across as somebody who's positive and happy and cheerful all the time. I've met you. And now, of course, we all have a personality when we go out and meet people because nobody's watching you 24/7.
Yeah.
So you do have your moments and stuff. But great. Good to know that you have you believe in Buddhism, you said,
Yes.
and you said practicing Buddhism.
Yes. So it isn't a religion. It isn't a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life.
So what does the practicing Buddhism?
So basically,
what does your daily practice look like?
So
Is there a daily practice?
There is a daily practice. So there is a daily prayer that we do, and there is a daily chant that we do every day. That is a daily practice. There are no rituals in it.
How long does it take?
It depends on how much you want to do. You don't want to do it. You want to do it for 3 hours. Do it for 3 hours. You want to do it for 30 seconds, do it for 30 seconds.
Okay.
There is no hard and fast rule about how much you should chant and how much. There's a daily prayer that you do, obviously.
Sure.
But you can chant for 30 seconds. You want to chant for 3 hours, you chant for 3 hours. You want to chant for 10 hours, you want to chant for 10 hours. Nobody's stopping you. Nobody's forcing you to chant for a specified number of hours or specified number of minutes. It's entirely up to you. It's entirely up to you. And, it all depends upon, and it'll come from within. There are people who chant long hours because they're happy. There are people who chant long hours because they are not happy, or they are being overwhelmed by a particular situation, and therefore they just want to change the situation, and therefore they're chanting to change that situation. So it could be anything.
How's that different from drinking?
How is that different from... No, it isn't. It's just
you
a
drink
way...
if you're happy, you drink if you're sad.
The only difference is that... No, there's a difference. And that is what we define very clearly in this practice as well, or in this philosophy as well. There is something called an absolute happiness and a relative happiness. The drinking is a relative happiness. I'm happier right now than I was half an hour back because I'm in a different world.
Yeah.
But half an hour later,
yeah,
you will not be happy anymore. Whereas what this practice tells you is gradually you continue to change your life condition so that you move away from that half an hour before I wasn't happy and half an hour later I won't be happy. You will gradually continue to stay happy and happier as you move along.
Nice.
That's the difference.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about this philosophy. How were you introduced to this?
So my husband,
what is it?
So my husband had been practicing prior to that, but he wasn't very regular with the practice. He would, as I said, because there are no rules around it, he would chant one day, not chant the other day.
What drew you to this practice? Because he was you were introduced
by him. So he was introduced by a friend because he was a bit disturbed by his sister's health condition. So a friend introduced him to the practice, saying that if you're again overwhelmed by your sister's health condition, why don't you start chanting for her and things will change. And things did change at that point in time. And then he went off and on. And it was when he left his job, you kind of leave your job with a big high saying, I'm a vice chairman or a chairman of a company and I'm leaving my job and I'm going to start my business tomorrow and everything's going to be great. And then 2 months later, you realize that there are people who would not even take your call because the reason why they were taking your call was because of your visiting card. And then you start struggling with what have I done and what should I do from here? So it was initially to help him get back into the rhythm because I'd realized that it's a practice which helped him ground himself or didn't let him get overwhelmed. So initially it was to help him or get him into the rhythm again in that practice.
So you were sort of doing it with him too.
So I was doing it with him just to encourage him to say that, see, I believe that I practice Buddhism and that's my anchor in life. And I tell people, I'm not forcing you to come and start practicing Buddhism, but you have to have an anchor in life. It could be anybody. Find somebody who can be your anchor in life because you will need that person, that philosophy, whatever it is, to be able to go back to every time that you face a challenge or you get overwhelmed by this world. So it was my way to support him. And with time, I realized that things were changing for him slowly, but I was in a happy world. Somehow the same situation with my kids was not bothering me that much. Somehow I had this new, zeal to say, why am I stuck in this job? Why am I not looking out to find something more? And what can I do to actually get a better job? And I realized that my conditions were changing. His changed eventually, and which is why I just stuck to it and have been at it for the last 15 years.
So you started doing something to help him and it helped you more.
Yeah.
At least in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, what comes to mind is this is not due to a practice, but I never wanted a child. My wife really wanted one. It took her a year to convince me. And when we agreed and we eventually had the child, having the child has changed
your life.
And
I'm I can see that.
All
the Insta posts. I know.
Yeah, I'm crazy about it. And I could never imagine that it would change my life in this way. But I did it totally out of, because you mattered to me. You mattered to me. Let's do this.
And you'll be happy with it. So let's do it. Yeah.
Now she's like mothers are and I'm crazy about the child.
Yeah. I totally get that.
Great. So, and what is the philosophy? Do you want to talk a little bit about the philosophy? I would love to, because I want, for myself and for my audience as well, I want some tools that can help us.
Okay.
Meditation is one, journaling
So
is
we
one.
don't really talk about it publicly, but I will just say
where does somebody go to learn about it?
Okay, so we have this is basically a philosophy by a Japanese priest called Nichiren Daishonin. Okay, and there is a organization which is SGI, which is based out of Tokyo, Japan, and we have an India arm as well called BSG. You can just Google and you will find out about the organization and the practice and the philosophy, the way of living.
What does it require? Does it require like a membership or
No,
showing
there is no,
what commitment?
Yeah, so there are basically monthly meetings that happen, which is a group of people in close by proximity. For example, like in our community, in our condominium, we get together every month and we talk and share about our own challenges and victories. We talk about the philosophy, we learn, we understand what is it that, how do we need to change ourselves to become happy. So one of the things that this philosophy talks about is the fact that you are in this world to become happy. You are not here to suffer. You've been brought into this world to be happy. And therefore, this philosophy helps you to become happy.
Didn't Buddha say that life is all about suffering?
No. That was the initial preaching of his. This philosophy is actually on the last final preaching of Buddha, which he shared with the world after he attained nirvana, where he says that suffering can be happiness as well. So you can be happy while suffering as well. This is the last of his preachings that he did. And this is what the philosophy is based on. So one is that you're here in this world to be happy. And when I'm saying happy, it's not that you're going to be dancing every day and you're going to be, laughing away and, giggling away. That's not the happiness. The happiness is that whatever happens in your life, whether good or bad, your life condition will not change. Your life condition will always be high and you will always accept it with calm and peace and you will live through it.
Yeah.
Because, as I say, this too shall pass. Whether it's good or bad, it has to pass.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the whole philosophy.
Yeah.
The second very important part of this aspect of this philosophy, Vipin, is that it says that if in this world you are here to be happy, it is your duty also to make the rest of the world happy.
Wow.
So you have to
Which is why you give me the energy and the vibes and that lovely hug every time you meet me. Wonderful.
So you have to make others happy as well. That is what your duty is if you're on this earth. Now you can make others happy by doing things for them, by showing compassion, and also by introducing this philosophy to other people as well. So it's your way of making sure that you pass it on in whatever manner to make the others happy as well.
Okay.
And therefore, the one big mantra, if I may use the word, for this philosophy is compassion. Unless and until you have compassion, you will never be able to make the other person happy. Unless and until you have compassion, you will never be courageous yourself, because compassion for the other person gives you the courage to do something for that person. And of course, you also have to have compassion for yourself as well.
That's a whole other thing.
For yourself, exactly. But that's the...
As much as I love hearing about it, I can, for sure say that hearing about these things is wonderful, but you will need to develop them through daily practice.
It is through daily practice. It is through daily practice. Yes, absolutely.
Practice नहीं होती है तो फिर वो नहीं होता.
It is daily practice.
Just ज्ञान.
It is,
And I love the fact that you just mentioned you can be happy while suffering also. So what comes to mind is Viktor Frankl's book.
That's a great story about how he kind of lives through his period in the prison. So
and if you can be happy in that condition, it's incredible.
It's just your view of your circumstances. It's how you look at each and every thing that's happening around you.
When you think about it for a moment, it just feels life changing, isn't it? Like very recently that incident comes to mind of that man committing a suicide. Recording that 100-minute video and leaving that note and stuff. And you, as an individual, I think everybody pretty much at some point or the other does feel overwhelmed with things.
Absolutely.
And if you have tools that can actually make you realize, okay, इससे
This
भी कोई
too
फर्क नहीं
shall
पड़ेगा,
pass.
उससे भी कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा,
This
चल
too shall
जाएगा.
pass. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful, Rashmi. Thank you so much for that. Lovely. Okay, so let's get to the heart of the podcast. Running.
Running.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've been running for a while, and then you. So one thing I remember from our last conversation, I said I don't remember anything, but certain things have stayed with
Yeah.
me, and one of them was when I was asking you about juggling priorities,
Yes.
work-life balance,
Yeah.
and you were, I don't know if you still are, you were traveling to Mumbai every single week. So maybe twice a week or something like that. You were
Every
traveling
week, yeah.
crazy travel schedules. And how are you managing? And you mentioned, which has stayed with me, that there are these seasons of life where you have to sort of something takes a back seat, and when there are other priorities in life, my running takes a back seat.
Absolutely.
And then when I sign up for an event, then everybody else understands and
exactly.
and they sort of understand and support.
True,
and you've got to be okay with that.
Yes.
You've got to be fine with that.
Yeah.
But sometimes that back seat can actually just take you further back in life, in terms like to the extent that you may need a comeback. So we do. You disappeared for a while from running.
I did.
So what happened?
So the way I've been managing my running is that every year I would sign up for an A race. That would be my goal race where I wanted to get something done.
Sure.
So if I go back in time to 2010, 11, 12, and I don't want to go back in time to that long, but let's say I go back in time to 2017 because after that life changed. 17, I'd gone to Chicago. The previous year I'd gone to Berlin and I had a full marathon PB of 4:06. And I'd trained very well for Chicago as well. And I wanted to crack the sub 4 thing.
Sure.
But things happen, as you know, on the race day, on the track. I actually finished my race in 4 hours and 26 minutes. I came back very frustrated and I wanted to, at that point in time, I didn't know what to do next. So somebody told me about, and before that I'd done the Comrades. So the longest that I'd run till that time was about 89 kilometers. And every time somebody would say, oh, how long have you run? And I would say 89. Say, 100 kyun nahi kiya? So after I came back from Chicago, I managed to get myself a registration for the Bangalore Ultra 100K. Yeah. And I said, okay, let's now go do a 100K. And so that I can very proudly tell people, 100K is my longest distance and not an odd 89, which I had done in Comrades.
Yeah.
So I signed up for the Bangalore Ultra with a friend's help. The
देखो
registrations
इंसान
had
कहीं
closed.
खुश नहीं है. Comrades जैसी रेस
करके बाद भी
उसके बावजूद भी
अभी हम इस साल की बात करेंगे ना 100 के बाद क्या हुआ. So in 2017 I went for Bangalore Ultra and because I had trained so well for Chicago, it's just that particular day wasn't my day and I had kind of failed at what I wanted to do. But I had a very solid training before that. I ramped up my mileage after coming back from Chicago in early October. This race was mid of November, so I had almost like a month to ramp up my mileage. And I think if you consider me immodest, so be it, but I was flying on the course in those bamboo forests in Bangalore. And I finished that run of 100 kilometers. I had a target of 14 hours. I finished it in 12 hours and 52 or 57, I don't know.
Wow.
There still, by the way, that Bangalore Ultra shut down after that. That was the last edition. Yeah. And therefore, they still have on their website, if the website is still on, the course record for my age group for 100 kilometer. But forget all of that. I had a good run. It was my day. I was flying all through and very strong and had a great time. And then after
such a good run that you shut the race down.
Yeah, they said no more. So I'd done my 100Ks and then I was smitten. And in quick succession, so this was November 17. January 2018, I was in Kodaikanal to do 130 kilometers there, finished that in about 24 hours or 25 hours something, 130. And this was hilly, very, very hilly kind of
was that the race where you also met Vijay Pandey?
Yes, that's the one where I met Vijay Pandey as well. Yes,
right.
Yeah. The South gang. A lot of people from South actually in that race. I came back, went to Hong Kong. I had a business trip to Hong Kong in March. And I did another 100 kilometers in Hong Kong at the Macleay Horse Trail. 5,000 meters of overall elevation in about 26 hours again. And that was my third 100K. And then November of 18. And then I did a few I think a 50 kilometers somewhere, I don't remember. November 2018, I did another 100K in Singapore in hot and humid conditions in about 14 odd hours, flat. So, but the humidity was the main problem. So I was on this
100K
streak, in a way. And then I did a stadium run in December, which
I was a part of, and I saw you on the track.
Yes,
and I met you on the track, and you were running beautifully.
Yes, but I DNF'd in the sense I gave up at the middle of the night. I don't know, it was cold or whatever,
It
but
was
something
December,
happened.
it was
December,
Delhi,
it was something
and
happened.
Everybody gave up.
So I just gave up and I said I came back home. But that was 2018. 19 was a focus on the short distance. So it was more of half marathons. Okay. And then COVID happened. In those 100K races, I had this big dream of going to UTMB.
Yeah.
To do the CCC, which is the 100 kilometer leg race at UTMB. So the UTMB is 161. The next is CCC, which is 100 kilometers. And then they have the shorter versions of 50 kilometers, etc. So and at that point in time, the way the entry to the UTMB used to work was that you had to collect points through races which are affiliated or they were giving ITRA points. And you had to collect a minimum number of ITRA points to put your name in the lottery. And then the lottery would be drawn. If you're not successful for 2 years, the third year, you automatically would get the entry. So my name didn't come in the first 2 years. And the third year, in 2020, when I was supposed to go for UTMB, COVID happened and the race didn't happen. In 2021, I could not go again. The second wave came again. So France, Europe wasn't allowing Indians to visit France or Europe. So I couldn't go again. But I continued my training in 2021. I did the Buddha Trail. I did 2022, I think April, I did the Ooty Ultra 60K. I did a few more races and I continued my training. 2021 December. So basically, now I knew August of 2022, I had to go for UTMB. So 21 December, I signed up for December for border at 161 kilometers. I DNF'd at 125.
Yeah.
Wasn't feeling well.
That must have been painful. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So this was that I basically could not handle the nutrition part well.
But 125
is still a long. And before you say, "Arey 125 to kiya," don't say that.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
because
that.
मेरे को लोग बोलते थे, "Why are you sulking, Rashmi?"
No. I'm saying you'll sulk more because.
Exactly. Yeah. I would actually get angry when people would say, 125 kiya. Arey Baba, 125 kiya, lekin 160 nahi kiya. So I DNF'd that race and I sulked for almost like a month or so. But then I knew I had to get back because I had the UTMB coming up in August 2022.
Before you do that, I don't want to leave this set because I've also DNF'd at Border Ultra. So I know the feeling. Just take me back to that 25th kilometer or let's say 10 kilometers preceding that. What was going through your mind and were you not it must have been really tough to take that call.
So I messed up my nutrition at the 80th kilometer. Okay, and from 80 till 100, I did not drink anything, no water, nothing to eat. And I ran with a friend of mine, Dinesh Heda from Goa. And we were running together.
This year as well?
Yeah, and this year as well. And we ran a lot of races together actually. A lot of Malnad, Rohtang, and a lot of other races. So
you've done Malnad as well,
Yeah. I've done Malnad twice. Thrice.
Wow. Okay.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 events I've done. 3 editions. So he forced me to have something at 100, but I threw up. And then from 100 till 118, we just walked. He said, we have enough time. Even if we just walk, we'll be able to finish it. Let's just continue to walk. And by that time, because I'd not eaten anything for that long, I developed acidity. And that started to pain. Now, this was a new feeling for me because while I'd done 26 hours, I'd been on the route for 26 hours. I told you about the MacLehose Trail and the Kodaikanal Trail. But I had been eating well and I'd been, fueling myself well in those races. And I had not experienced this kind of acidity, etc. But that I couldn't understand that it was acidity. I just thought I have a pain in my stomach and pain in my gut and it was moving up. And I panicked. So I told him, I said, look, son, I've got this pain, but let's continue to walk and we'll take a call once the sun rises, because once the sun rises and it's normal again, as you can imagine, the desert night is very cold. We were in our down jackets and all. I'll take a call at that time of time. Even after the sun came up, I wasn't still feeling well and I'd still had not eaten anything. And the pain continued. And I panicked. And to me...
Panicked, thinking that this might be
it
something.
might just be something more severe. One of the things that I've always promised my family and my husband is that even if I'm doing this crazy stuff of going into the jungles, running these long distances, I will take a call where I think it's becoming risky. I will not cross over that line where I risk my life or risk, anything. It isn't, that race is not the end of me or the end of this world for me.
Yeah.
And so at 118, I told Dinesh, I said, why don't you carry on? I'll continue to work for a little while. And if I can make it, I can make it even walking as well. But why are you putting yourself to a pain with me walking when you can easily run? So he pushed off. I walked for another 6-7 kilometers and I saw Vishwas coming by, and that was my signal to say, enough, let's just call it quits. And in fact, I remember Vishwas telling me, nahi, ab chalo, hum aapko bithayenge nahi gaadi mein. I said, nahi, I want to sit in the car, bas ho gaya mera. And that's when I gave up because I panicked with the pain, which was completely new for me. I'd never experienced that in any of my runs.
Why did you mess up your nutrition? Why did you not eat anything between
No, so what happened was that at 80, till about 80, every 10 kilometers at the aid station, there was some hot water or hot chai or black tea or something. At the 80th, for some reason, it wasn't there.
Okay.
So for energy, I said, I need to have something at the aid station to continue being fueled and have some energy. I got down a glass of Coke. Now that Thanda Coke at 1 a.m. messed up my stomach completely.
Okay.
And because of that, I just could not eat anything after that, which resulted in acidity and the pain that came with it. And I was downhill after that.
Okay.
So that is what happened. This time I had the same pain. I didn't panic because I knew last time I didn't die. So I knew this time I will not die. So I continued.
No, but it's interesting to hear the pact that you've made with your family and told them that you will
very
not...
Very clear. I will never risk.
But isn't it difficult to differentiate between the mind telling you that it's super difficult and it's getting risky, and then in the real risk? Or are you able to differentiate with ease with all the experience that you have now?
I think now I can. So for example, when I was...
पहले भी कोई DNF हुए हैं कहीं पे?
नहीं ये पहला DNF था मेरा. लॉन्ग रेस का पहला DNF था वो.
Okay.
First DNF. Right. उसके बाद एक और हुआ. So I was coming to that only. So August 2022, I went for the UTMB. Now by this time, I had been training, but I had lost a bit of my fitness. And I still went for it. And that whole craze for doing the UTMB had gone. Remember when in 2018, I'd collected all my points, put my name in the lottery, 18, 19 went, 20 went, 21 went, 3 years have gone. And that whole craze of UTMBs kind of died down a little. And I gave up at the 60th kilometer.
Wow.
And
the race that you had been dreaming about.
The race I'd been dreaming about. And I'm going to go back again, but that's another story. But I gave up at the 60th kilometer, DNF, came back. But every time that I've had one setback, I've actually managed to convert that into a victory in the next one. I went for the London Marathon in November of 2022. And while I didn't get a PB, but it was very close to my PB. So a 4:06 was my PB earlier in Berlin in 2016. And 6 years later, I finished the marathon in 4 hours and 12 minutes, which is not bad according to me.
Brilliant. No, before you talk about happy things, I just want to drag on the sad ones a little bit longer. Why did you quit at 60?
So 60, again, the fear, mind is it's a very funny place. And the minute you let fear creep in, you are a very different person. So I again was doing very well till 50. In fact, till about 55, 56, I was okay. I just had a very bad patch of about 3-4 kilometers and nothing to do with nutrition, nothing to do with my physical health or anything. It was mental. I just did not enjoy those last 4-5 kilometers. So I reached the 60K mark. I'd made into the cutoff time, about 30 or 40 minutes before the cutoff. And the volunteers were telling me, why don't you go on? Why don't you go on? And I said, I've just made it. How many people do you think will be behind me? They said there should be easily another 20-25 people. So I just sat down for a while and I saw another 5-6 go away. And you're doing your maths now. Oh my God, so only 10 people behind me. And then as you see another 2-3 go away. And then you say, oh, maybe what might happen is that people may come here but may also DNF here. And then if I start now, actually there's a possibility I might just be the last one on the route. And if something happens to me, nobody will be coming on that route for like hours and nobody will even know that something's happened to me. So you know how the mind's kind of trying to trick you into thinking all negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And I DNF'd. Because the next stretch was a 5-kilometer uphill. And I knew I'll be slow. And it's quite possible I may not make the next cutoff. This is me thinking.
Sure.
I don't think I'll be able to make the next cutoff.
Yeah.
And what if I actually cannot make the cutoff because I am not feeling well and something happens to me? Nobody will even come by for the next half an hour, 40 minutes, and I may just die there. Exaggerated thoughts.
You catastrophize, yeah.
And I gave up. And that volunteer, I still remember, he was telling me, look, if you're not going up there, you have to go sit in that vehicle, the vehicle that's there to take us back to the start line.
And you were sitting outside?
I was outside still.
Nahi jana.
I wasn't even in the vehicle and I wasn't even moving ahead.
Yeah.
He was like, you take a call. You have to decide. Do you want to go into the vehicle or you want to move ahead? And then I am standing there. 10 minutes I wasted just standing there. And then I said, okay, no, I'm not going.
Did you like scream at him? I'm thinking.
I told him that. I said, let me just think. I said that to him. I said, let me just think. And he told me, he said, you can make it. Why are you not moving? Why are you wasting time? Why are you not moving? Just move. And it's an uphill. You will be slow. So if you have to make the cutoff, just move. And I said, no, not
Nothing
worth
worked.
it. And I went and sat in the vehicle.
Right. And
that was the end of UTMB, my dream for UTMB. I'll have to dream again.
So when that happened or the previous DNF happened, did your practice help you or did you?
It helped me in the sense that as I was telling somebody else, one of the other participants who DNF this year in Border, that you have to put an expiry date to your sulking. You have to get out of it. So I gave myself time.
How much?
So for Border was about a month. UTMB was quick. I think UTMB was 15-20 days and I was back. And I said, what am I going to be doing next? And then there was London Marathon coming up and I said, can I build on this training that I've done?
Yeah, that's another way, I think.
Can I build on this strength and the training that I've done up till now to see if I can do a good run in London?
I think that's a good one because just me deciding, okay, I'm not going to sulk beyond, let's say, 31st of March, that doesn't work. If you have an event or something coming up,
you just start thinking about that.
Start thinking about that, and that's a good way to get over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does require getting over because
it does require getting over. Yeah. But then London was my last big event, and 22 was also when I turned 50, and let's come to the point where we said about why I have not been running. For 2 years, 3 years, life happened. A lot of personal issues. I changed jobs as well. But that's not that big a challenge. But also...
Still a challenge. You have to get used to
I
can only imagine how big were your other challenges that you're calling a job change not much of a challenge.
Yeah. So personal challenges. And then more importantly, that's one thing that I really want to talk about, Vipin, is that... and we don't talk about it, and is the fact that as women, turn premenopausal, there's just so much happening in their body, and which is then starts to reflect in the way they are reacting to the circumstances and the environment, that we don't talk about it that much.
Yeah.
A large part of how I reacted to my personal challenges and how I kind of took a backseat from running, thinking it isn't something I want to do, etc., is because of the hormonal changes. The physiological changes that happen is something that I don't think the society also today gives so much of an attention or talks about it that much.
I'm honestly getting chills because women around us all over.
And there are you come and speak to women when you sit down in our group, and you will have everybody share their stories and how they're coping up with it.
Wow.
But it's a real deal. It's a real challenge. It's a real problem that women face as they start moving into that premenopausal, menopausal
And
area.
the period can last very long.
And that period is very specific to an individual.
Yeah.
It can be 2 years for one, it can be 4-5 years for me.
Yeah.
And for me, it started in 2021, 22, and it still is continuing. And the support that the family can give you at that point in time to help you cope up with all that's going on in your life is something which is very much important and very much needed. I don't think we talk about it enough, but that whole physiological change, along with whatever else was happening in my life, because I was going through this whole physiological change, it just exaggerated the problems that were happening with me, or the way I was getting overwhelmed with those things, where the first logical thing was, I don't want to go run. This isn't what defines me. I don't think I want to go run. I would just laze around at home in the morning, wouldn't get out for a run, didn't sign up for any events, nothing. Or if I signed up for an event thinking maybe that's going to motivate me and probably I should sign up for an event and I should start training for it, I never turned up for those events. I don't know how many places I've signed up, paid the registration fees and never turned up. But the 2 years have been really difficult, very difficult. But then, as I said, for me, thankfully, the practice helps. So middle of last year is when I said I have to take my life back into my hands, which is when I stepped out again to run short distances.
You mentioned family can support. In what ways can family support?
Emotional. To be able to understand.
If you were to say anything to the men listening to this, how can they help women
if
in their
there
lives?
is one person who can help, if you have a spouse or a partner, if there is one person who can help a woman at that point in time, it's their spouse or their partner. To be understanding of the changes that are going on, and therefore the help that is required, probably medically or whatever else that is required. But more emotionally, Vipin. More emotionally, to be there, to be able to understand what that woman's going through.
And be more empathetic.
And I don't think anybody is looking for a solution to their problems. If I'm having a problem at work, it's not that I'm looking for a solution from anyone, but it's just being more empathetic to how I am reacting to a situation. To understand where is my reaction coming from.
Yeah.
And not to kind of take it personally or otherwise. Yeah, I think that is a big one. So I joke around with my friends that Akshay Kumar's been making a lot of these movies on social causes. He's made that movie Padman is made on toilets and everything else. I hope somebody can give him this idea to also make a movie on how women go through this whole premenopausal and menopausal period and do something about it as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's something which definitely needs to get talked about. It definitely is something which needs to get addressed. That is there, yeah.
Great.
So that kind of, August of last year is when I said I need to kind of take my life back in my hands. I can't let circumstances define who I am. And while I was very cheerfully managing things, but one thing that, as I said, had taken a backseat was my running. And I started with very baby steps with short runs initially. And then I'd done, of the 6 majors, now of course there's a 7th one as well, I'd done 3 already. I'd done Berlin, I'd done Chicago, and I'd done London. And so I put my name in the lottery for Tokyo Marathon. And come October, I got my name after 7 years. 7 years of putting my name in and by the way, there's a whole story behind it as well, and I'll come to that. 7 years of putting my name in the lottery. I'd never gotten my name in the lottery, and this year I got my name in the lottery. I remember I said that the headquarters for the practice that I do is in Tokyo. And as I said, there are no coincidences. And therefore, it was again a way of the universe telling me that I need to get back to running, because I do. And so we have our headquarters in Tokyo, which is there is this whole building there. We actually go and chant, which is where our sensei chants. Sensei is our guru, the mentor. He is, he's no more, but at that time he was alive, and he chants, and we kind of go pay our gratitude in that sense. So this was my thing that it's time for me to get my life back in order, which means that I have to start running, prepare for the Tokyo Marathon, prepare for my Tokyo trip, because I also wanted to go to the headquarters and pay my gratitude for allowing me for my life to have so many good things. Despite whatever has happened, I'm still happy, cheerful, alive, and I've still got so many good things happening in my life. And that is when I started training for the Tokyo Marathon. But it wasn't a very disciplined training because life was still in a turmoil, a little bit of a turmoil. But I managed to stick to a plan. And I went in with a target of completing my Tokyo Marathon in about 5 hours and 15 minutes. But I finished it in 4 hours and 50 minutes. Way ahead of my target. So whatever I had done probably worked. And that, I think I would say, as my comeback in the sense. Yeah. Right. But it required a lot of willpower to be able to say that I will not sulk anymore. I will not let the circumstances define me, but I will create the circumstances which are happy for me. And the circumstances which are happy for me is that I have to train for the Tokyo Marathon and that I have to visit the headquarters in Tokyo and go pay my gratitude. And that is what kind of propelled me in a way to start thinking again about myself.
Where is this conversation happening? Is this happening on pen and paper, or is it happening inside your head?
In my head.
So what does that moment look like? Is it in your balcony, or is it where what do you...
No, it is when I am chanting. When I'm chanting, I'm having this conversation of how I want my life to be like. And I'm telling myself this is how I want my life to be like.
Is it possible to chant and think?
Yeah.
Because I thought that's what chanting does. It sort of stops the neurosis in your head and just focus.
So it actually makes you more aware of what's going on around you. It makes you more aware of who you are.
Wow.
And so you can have these conversations in your head. And it isn't a conversation you can have for the entire, like if I'm chanting for half an hour, I thought I'm having this conversation for half an hour. But yeah, you do have this conversation. You determine that this is what you want to do. And then you continue with your chanting as well.
Wow.
But that is how I would say, that is where probably things turned. And August of last year is when I said, I will live the way I want to live. And the way I want to live is not like this. It has to be something more meaningful. And I need to be able to take life back in my hands.
Cool.
So Tokyo happened and then I was on a high because I had finished my run half an hour before my target time. And I again went back into a lazy mode, but in a happy lazy mode. It wasn't that sulking lazy mode, but it was a happy lazy mode.
Okay.
And then this whole thing of getting back to the ultra mode, because I hadn't done an ultra. So I remember my last ultra, or at least an attempt to do an ultra, was August of 2022, March 2024, more than a year and a half gone by. And then, this whole urge to go finish my unfinished business at Border that came up. And obviously the first message went to my partner in crime, Dinesh, to say, I've decided that I want to complete my 100 milers this year in December. And I'm training for it. And we're going to go do it and register.
Yeah.
And so we said, okay, fine, we'll register and we will do it this year. But I went into a very happy, lazy mode. Didn't run after I came back from Tokyo for till August when I met you in Chandigarh.
Lake
so almost,
Ultra.
Almost 4 months.
Yeah.
And which is when I realized if I have to run a 100 miler in December, might as well start training. So I had a few things lined up from August till December. We did the Lake to Lake Ultra 35 kilometers. I went for the Hyderabad Marathon in August end. Then I had a New York Marathon, which was my 5th major in New York in November, early November. And then Dinesh and I had agreed that we're going to do the Ahmedabad Marathon end of November as our last training run, so to say, for the 100 miler. And
did you do that as well?
Yeah, I did that. But that's another story. So
Another 42?
Another 42, yeah.
Okay.
No, but we'll come to that. So Chandigarh happened. Hyderabad was a bad run. Somehow I wasn't feeling good from the very start. And I guess there are these days when the body just doesn't help. It just doesn't help you in running. But if you traveled all the way to... if you're running around here, you would just come back home. But if you've gone to Hyderabad to run, you have to finish the run.
Yeah.
So in about 5 hours and 20 minutes, I did finish the full marathon. And I said, fine, whatever, long training run done. Then I picked up a plan and I genuinely trained to the T to that plan for the New York Marathon.
Okay.
And my target was to do it under 4 hours and 45 minutes, at least better the Tokyo time. Whereas the New York course is tougher than the Tokyo course. It's got lots of ups and downs. Tokyo is a flatter course, but I still wanted to better my time. And of course, the cold is another story altogether. Getting to the start line is another logistical nightmare. But I still wanted to do a 4 hour 45 minutes, 4 hour 40 minutes for New York. And I trained well for it. And I was running very well when at the 25th kilometer, I tripped.
Oh.
And I hurt myself on the knee, got a big wound, and then just walked to the finish. Walked as in walked, run in about 5 hours and 12 minutes to the finish line.
Damn.
Came back. My plan was to come back from New York, ramp up my mileage for the miler, maybe do a few back-to-back weekends, And the way I've always trained for any long distance run, Vipin, is that I do very heavy weekends. So I would, for example, when I was training for Comrades or even for my 100 kilometers, I would do maybe a 30-32 on a Saturday morning, do another 5 to 7 in the evening, go do another 25 to 30 on a Sunday morning, and if possible, do another 5 to 7 on Sunday evening. Wow. So really make my weekends heavy and basically get my body used to running on tired legs, etc. Yeah. But I couldn't do that because of the wound. I couldn't run for the next 3 weeks. In fact, I was in two minds to go for Ahmedabad also or no. But then I had a friend. I had the same friend who talked about that Pondicherry. Remember that friend I talked about?
Yes.
He'd come to meet me again and he said, I've left running. I'm not running. I said, why are you not running? I'm going to Ahmedabad end of November. Sign up for that and we're going to see you there. So he'd signed up for a half marathon.
Okay.
So he was coming there. So there was no way I could have dished two of them.
Sure.
So I turned up, did a very, very slow, easy 5 hours full in Ahmedabad. And with just that training done, I was at the start line of Border Ultra.
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock on the Saturday morning on 14 December.
Yeah.
My second attempt to do a 100-miler in Jaisalmer.
Yeah.
That was it. 3 days before the race, I called up Dinesh. I said, Dinesh, I've not trained for it because we'd met in Ahmedabad before that.
Yeah.
I haven't trained for it. I'm coming there only on two things. One, my willpower. Two, your support. And he said, this year we will do it. And we did it.
Yeah. Amazing. So what was this run like? Talk us through this one.
This run was couple of things. One, the route had changed from the last time I'd done.
Very significantly?
Not much. I don't think it made a difference.
Okay.
It made a difference, but I would say this was a lot more pleasant because the earlier route from the 70 till the 100, the 30 kilometers were on really very narrow inside track, very sandy, muddy, and very desolate, which was the case even this time. But that stretch came this time after the 100 kilometers.
Okay.
But second, there were too many people this time around compared to 21. So in 21, for example, for a very, very, very long period, hours, it was just Dinesh and me on the road. This time you would have people coming.
Oh yeah, because so many
people had signed up. Yeah,
900 odd people.
Yeah, and 200 odd plus for the 100-miler.
Yeah,
which is a big number. Can you imagine? Yeah, exactly.
In one race, because a couple of years later, we used to think that those log nahi honge jinhone 100 mile kiya
exactly, absolutely. So that was the second difference. And the third was that I determined that I have to get this done. There is no way I will not get it done. I mean, that was a big difference.
Sure.
While I knew I had not trained well physically in that sense, but somewhere in my head, I was very sure I want to complete it this year.
Sure.
And so I'd put my time target for the 60 and the 100. And I knew that even if I get to the 100, in that time, even if I walk after that, I will be able to finish it. So Dinesh and I had agreed on 27 hours.
Okay.
He said, we're not going to rush it. We're not going to
28
mess up.
is the cutoff?
28 is the cutoff. I wanted to do it in 26 hours, but I knew it wasn't possible. So while the 26 was there, but I knew 26 hoga nahi. But 27 is what I had realistically aimed for, that this is something that I can definitely do if I just walk also. And so this time when the acidity pain came in.
What kilometer?
90. just before the 100-kilometer mark.
Okay.
It didn't scare me.
Was there Coca-Cola around at the time?
This time I didn't have the Coca-Cola in the night. No, no Coca-Cola in the night. So after I left the 60K mark, when the sun had set, I said no Coca-Cola till next day morning. So I said अगर मुझे वो Coca-Cola पीनी है ना तो उसके लिए पहले पूरी रात और फिर morning का hour निकालना है और फिर वो Coca-Cola मिलेगी 130 पे. तो 130 पे पहुंच के मुझे छोड़ना नहीं है इस बार, आगे जाना है. तो yeah, that was, I think that was the big difference. That it didn't scare me this time.
Okay.
I didn't let it go to my head and I said, it doesn't matter, we'll just continue.
Beautiful. What have you, I mean, you've already shared your lessons about comebacks, but is there anything that you would want to say to people who might be struggling to come back into the sport?
So I'll tell you
that
the
they love so much?
one big thing I'll tell people is that sometimes what happens is that when we come back, Vipin, we come back to make up for the lost time. 2 साल नहीं भागा, 42 नहीं किया, 21 नहीं किया, चलो 21 फटाफट कर लेते हैं, चलो 42 कर लेते हैं. I would suggest start small. So I remember when I started running, imagine, I still haven't got my speed back. So where for me a sub 2 half marathon used to be
a staple.
A staple. I could just go run a 157, 158, just like that. Today, that has changed to 215. So I'm 15 minutes slower for the half marathon distance. But I've accepted it. For whatever reasons, whatever changes that have happened, whatever's gone through in the last 2 years, I have slowed down. So I think that's the first thing to accept, that you can probably get back to that same speed and the same endurance. It's going to take time. And you should not rush into it, and you should not start chasing it from day one. Give your body that time. When I started running, my heart rate used to go up to about 150, 157, even at a 7 minutes per kilometer pace. Today, it goes up at the 6-minute pace. So you have to give your body time to get used to that same kind of pressure.
Stimulus.
Yeah, exactly. That you're putting your body through. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And the second more important, therefore, is that when you don't see the results coming in soon, don't get frustrated.
Yeah.
It's very important to just stay the course.
Yeah.
Very important to just stay the course. So the first 2-3 months, I would just call up friends and say, ये तो भागना ही नहीं हो पा रहा, ये तो मैं 7 किलोमीटर भागती हूँ, मैं थक जाती हूँ, मेरा हार्ट रेट पता है 170 पहुंच जाता है, I'm not running, maybe there's something wrong. And by the way, I had 3 COVIDs also. That was the other reason why I was very scared about the heart rate thing. But I think you have to just stay the course, Vipin. That is the only way to make a comeback.
Yeah.
And the third one is you have to find your support system for people to give you that encouragement and that motivation. And I've had few friends who've been with me all through this period, helping me out to stay the course.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Wonderful.
That is, and of course your willpower. There's nothing that can beat it.
And that just proves comebacks are possible.
Comebacks are absolutely possible.
You sitting in front of me who can say, I've finished border 100 miles. That was the unfinished business.
Yeah,
I've done it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And maybe before I went in for this race, I thought that maybe once I do my 100-miler, I'll probably kind of hang up my Ultra boots. No way.
Yeah.
No way. I've already signed up for the next one.
Yeah.
That's another interesting one. So if you see my LinkedIn profile says CFO, treasurer, speaker, ultra marathoner. And I said, if I don't finish this one, I'm going to come and drop the ultra one from the description. And just imagine, I could have thought so much about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think comebacks are definitely possible.
Yeah.
You may not come back at the same level as
and you have to
before,
drop your ego a little bit.
And you have to drop your ego to be able to accept that there is running a 6 minutes per kilometer is possible for me only in tempo, not on the race day.
No, I mean, this actually is precisely what I'm also struggling with now, because I'm also sort of making a comeback of some sorts.
Yeah, I know we talked about it.
Yeah, so we talked about it, and in August I did the 35K on your suggestion instead of 55. I'm now working with Nakul. All in running.
Yes.
So, and Nakul's been guiding me with my training and stuff.
Plans and all,
and this is where I'm struggling to sort of drop that ego a little bit.
Exactly.
Because he's not giving me the sort of workouts that I really want to do. Like, I'm raring to go And my kind of running
Trust
is
the process.
my kind of running is long distance running. So
Yeah.
I love doing 32Ks and the
Yeah,
36Ks. He's struggling to explain it to me कि यार रुक जा आराम
हाँ,
से. And-
अभी 32 का time नहीं आया.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you have to trust the process. You have to
And-
drop the ego, and you have
Yeah.
to just let your body get back to the rhythm
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, and it will if you
It will.
stay the course.
Yeah, it will.
Wonderful. Is there anything that you want to share that I haven't allowed you to share?
No, I think we've covered a lot from my childhood till the recent victory.
Yeah.
And by the way, the border is a great race to go do long distances if you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, the weather, of course, is something which you have to prepare yourself for because
It's not
if
as
you're
easy as
it's
it
not as
sounds.
easy as it sounds because the
it's a
weather,
road
the weather
race.
variation is huge.
Yeah.
If you're doing 100K or 100 miler from the heat till the cold,
Yeah.
and if you're doing 100 miler and a slow 100 miler, then the heat again the very next day is very challenging, but it's a great race to do.
Yeah. What do you like about Vishwas Sindhu?
He is a very straightforward person. He means what he says. And the best thing about him as an RD is the fact that he takes the feedback. So even when he did the 21 edition, there were a lot of things that went wrong in that race. He took the feedback.
Yeah.
Even this 24 edition is the best. And I cannot tell you to manage, you can very well imagine, manage 900 people on that
In
course.
an ultra marathon,
And
not
it's
a half.
not his hometown.
Yeah.
To arrange things where you stay is very different from going all the way to Jaisalmer and putting people together, an army of people. And by army, I mean literally army as well to put, to be there to help you get the race organized. He did a fab job on that one. However, there'll always be one or two things that didn't happen the way he had planned.
Yeah.
But he takes the feedback.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing about him.
Yeah. And no, I wonder why I asked that as the last question. I also love the man and I love the entire Hell Race team. And I think the race that you participated in, the closing race that we talked about, I think this is actually significant in the context of Indian running.
Absolutely.
Scene,
In fact, we were just
scene.
talking about how this race can be scaled up to and I told him, I was just joking with him. So this time he told us, you're not going to get your own bags. I'm going to give you drop bags. So I said, Vishwas, आपने तो इसको already international race बना दिया because India में तो किसी race में नहीं मिलते drop bags. Sorry, international races में मिलते हैं drop bags.
Yeah.
So, and then he took a feedback on the drop bag as well, how big it should be, how should he place the label, etc.
Yeah.
So I think this race actually has the potential to become a very large international level race.
I'd love to have international runners
coming in here as well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a great place. I mean, Jaisalmer is a great, lovely holiday town as well. December is a great time to be there.
Yeah.
And with the local authorities and with some more, planning done, I think it can turn into a very big race, big event.
Yeah. I also have unfinished business there. So maybe we'll do another one.
Yes, we will do another one.
And we'll talk about my
your
unfinished business. Yes.
And your unfinished business.
Yes.
That's true.
Wonderful, Rashmi. Lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for
Thank you so
making
much.
time.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.